Hello, today I'm here with Bruce Adams with the Montgomery County Office of Community Partnerships. So the President's new budget has proposed cuts to service programs. How will that affect the county?
So the Corporation for National and Community Service was enacted in 1990. Was a bill proposed by a Democrat, Senator Kennedy, signed by President George H.W. Bush. We've had bipartisan support for service programs for a long, long time, 80 years. I found, when I was coming over here, I got the Civilian Conservation Corps hat from the 1930s from FDR.
Wow.
In my office as a kind of a, I wasn't around in 1930, but I've got this as a souvenir for how far back this service commitment we have in the country goes. Of course, President Kennedy with the Peace Corps and on through all the presidents. Unfortunately, the president now has proposed eliminating the corporation. So that would knock out the AmeriCorps, it would knock out Senior Corps, it would knock out Vista, it would knock out some grants to our volunteer center. In our Office of Community Partnership, we have a very robust volunteer program. We have a volunteer center located in Germantown. We have a webpage, montgomeryserves.org, that has 800 different nonprofits putting their volunteer programs online so that 15,000 individuals go online and find service projects that they can do. We run days of service in October and during Martin Luther King Day. More importantly than our volunteer center is that in Montgomery County we have long reliance on our nonprofits. The government doesn't try to do everything. We have a very robust safety net. We're well regarded across the country for our welcoming of immigrants. So we have really strong programs, but our county executives and county councils have significantly relied on our nonprofit community to carry that load. And those nonprofits can only do what they do because of volunteers. It's volunteers who make Montgomery County special.
And as I understand, there are a lot of volunteers within Montgomery County, maybe a higher percentage than maybe some other countries around the U.S.
Absolutely. And so what the AmeriCorps and the Vista workers, we probably have 50 or 60 folks from a variety of ages doing service projects with the support of the AmeriCorps program, the Vista program, and they work for nonprofits. Let me just take I looked at the list: Catholic Charities, Public Defender, International Rescue Committee, Lutheran Social Services, Gandhi Youth Brigade, YMCA, Rebuilding Together, Conflict Resolution Center, Hospice Care, and on and on. These are, again, the organizations that make Montgomery County so special. Every one of those that I read has one or two or more AmeriCorps Vista workers. On top of that, we've got the 500 volunteers in our Senior Corps, in our RSVP program. They're doing tax aid, they're knitting gloves for the homeless, they're doing health programs for seniors. Just vital work is being done by volunteers in Montgomery County.
So if this budget goes through, how immediate will these cuts be to the programs?
The Corporation for National and Community Service is funded through the end of this fiscal year, so that's into September. And then the cuts, if they're made, will take place starting in this October of 2017. The cut proposed by the President is $1 billion across the country, and state and local governments don't have the resources to fill that gap. Plus, it's really important to note that our nonprofits are going to be needed more than ever because there's a whole series of cuts being proposed in our social safety net and other vital federal programs. And if those cuts are made, then nonprofits who step in with volunteers and step in with private fundraising are all the more important. If such a horrible thing would happen that somehow the Congress would eliminate the Corporation for National and community service. There certainly would be a cry about it, and conceivably there could be some private fundraising. But believe me, that private fundraising is needed right now, and on top of, to supplement and to add to the federal dollars, not to replace the federal dollars. So we would be in a hole. I'm sure that people would step up to some degree, but it's tough to fill $1 billion hole. Mm-hmm. So there would be great disruption to the Montgomery County tradition of rolling up your sleeves and helping your neighbors.
So it sounds like a big impact, not just in this area.
Across the country. I mean, I'm just describing Montgomery County, Maryland, but this would be true of jurisdictions all across the country.
So for those workers who are in that position right now with these organizations that are funded by this, if the funding goes away, what do those people do? We have an RSVP coordinator. She's got 500 volunteers doing all kinds of fantastic work. I know that tax aid people alone did taxes for 5,000, mostly seniors, mostly low income people. That's a big deal. Brought back recovered rebates of nearly $5 million for those 5,000 people. That's all done by volunteers. So we would hate to see a program like that go. And the staff person who organizes all that is funded by a federal grant through the corporation. Mm-hmm. Whether or not this budget goes through, it's incredibly important that Montgomery County is so reliant on our nonprofits, and the nonprofits are so reliant on volunteers. I mean, we have an incredibly strong fire and rescue service that the average taxpayer would be astonished if they saw how much of that is being done by volunteers, supplementing county and state and federal dollars for our paid firefighters and rescue squad people. But the volunteers are absolutely incredible. The number of hours that they spend and the lives that they save is just a great blessing to our community. Our streams would be dirtier if there weren't volunteers who willing to go out. Our streets would have more would be dirtier, would be messier if we didn't have volunteers. We wouldn't have folks in our schools helping and mentoring our students. We wouldn't have people helping to welcome our immigrants. Montgomery County is so strong because it's been such a great talent magnet, not just for people across the country, but for people from all over the world. That's what makes us special, and that's because we have this welcoming attitude, and a lot of the folks who are teaching English, who are teaching computers, who are teaching citizenship classes are volunteers. Mm-hmm. So the reach really extends into
Montgomery
every
County
component.
is special because of volunteers. It's that simple. Mm-hmm. And so we need people, whether this budget cut goes through or not, we need people to go to montgomeryserves.org and sign up. You'll find tons of listings from nearly 800 some nonprofit organizations. So there's some 15,000 people who use that on a regular basis to find their volunteer activities.
All right, so there you have it. Go ahead and find the website, sign up for it.
Roll up your sleeves, get to work, help your neighbors.
Well, thank you so much. We've been speaking with Bruce Adams, Director of Volunteer Programs in Montgomery County. Thank you.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Hurricane Katrina devastated the U.S. Gulf Coast, causing $100 billion of damage and over 1,800 deaths. It has become one of the largest and longest weather disasters in U.S. history. A full 80% of the levees in New Orleans failed, flooding almost 2/3 of the 500,000 population of the city known as the Big Easy. The National Flood Insurance Program paid out $16 billion in claims. The GAO reported that several billion in claims were wrongfully denied, and then another billion were improper or fraudulent.
In August of 2005, the natural disaster known as Hurricane Katrina struck the Gulf Coast. The storm ravaged Louisiana and destroyed much of New Orleans before dispersing, leaving over 1,500 dead and countless homes demolished. It has now been over 3 years since the hurricane made landfall. And though the cleanup effort continues, the work of restoring Louisiana is far from over. But in the 9th Ward, there are still people willing to sacrifice their time and energy to make a difference. This is David Smith Sr., an activist in the community and longtime volunteer. David is no stranger to sacrificing his time for the good of others.
I was a volunteer here in St. Bernard Parish for the past 24 years after I was paralyzed in a car accident. As you can see, this is what's left of my home after Katrina. I didn't think I'd ever see my home rebuilt again. I spent the past 2 years living in a FEMA trailer, waiting to die in a FEMA trailer.
Now, 3 years since the vicious storm, this veteran volunteer is getting the help he so richly deserves.
I'm Ashley Ramos.
I'm Emily Wasserman.
And we are here with the Sid Jacobson JCC program.
We're helping to build, to reconstruct the homes after Hurricane Katrina hit over 2 years ago. And we gave up our December vacation because we thought that there's nothing else I could think of that is more rewarding than doing something like this. And it's just so unbelievable to see personally the faces and of these people after their homes have been destroyed, and they've all stayed so positive about it. And it's really humbling, the whole experience.
Everything here was once amazing, and now it's been ruined, and I'd like to get it back to the way it was. And I'm willing to sacrifice my vacation, anything it takes to get this done.
It's kind of sad that all these homes were once like any other homes, and now just because of a hurricane, they got ruined and they have to start from scratch. And we're here to help them.
We saw a lot of the destruction, and it was really devastating to see what had actually happened. And it was a big accomplishment to figure out that we finished this, and that there's more of a chance that somebody might move back.
For me, this was much more, as a Catholic, what Christmas is to me is to practice giving instead of receiving, and this is a perfect thing for me. I came out here to give instead of staying home and receiving a bunch of gifts, and that's practically what I'm trying, because I've been pretty spoiled up to this point, and just when I heard about New Orleans, I felt like this would be a great idea to do that, and help others.
My Christmas present, the only thing I got for Christmas this year is a whole group of volunteers. I walked outside my front door and I seen a rainbow from the beginning to the end, and 20 minutes later I found out I was going to have some 16 volunteers helping me today. If there were more people like this in America that would volunteer their time to help put people back in their homes, thanks would be immense. And if you ever needed us, I'm pretty sure most of us would pack up our things and come to you. So I would like to see a permanent facility built where they have to put in 35 hours of community service and actual accountability. That way the state has something to grasp onto, so they could fund this and make this really happen. And they put in their hours in their community service, they'll have a fed meal and a free place to stay.
I just want to thank you volunteers for everything y'all have done. This storm has been where we have seen some of the best in America and some of the most scummiest people in the world that have come here for some of their own self-gain. But to see these young people that are here to do something, not to fill their pockets, is truly amazing. A lot of the people here that are doing this work are doing it genuinely from their heart and genuinely trying to improve our lives.
Thousands of volunteers came to the Gulf Coast to help rebuild. And a dozen years later, there are still homeowners who need the assistance from the volunteers and government to get back to where they were. Let's take a look at some of the stories of volunteers Travel Television has produced.
Hi, I'm Susan Wayman. I live down here, and my wonderful cousins and cousin-to-be came down from Michigan to help New Orleans. They wanted to work down here, so we said, hey, let's come here to the lower 9th Ward, and we've just had a wonderful time today.
We're helping to build a kitchen for the community center.
It's from
amazing that some of the people even working here from they live down the block, and they're putting their time in to build something that's gonna help everybody.
I think that I'm most impressed with the community effort and how people are coming from all over the country. We've met people from Baltimore and Albuquerque, and we're from Michigan, so this whole situation is a little bit removed for us. It wasn't until we got down here that we realized how important it is to volunteer and to put forth an effort to improve things.
I think what I was most struck by was how much devastation remains driving down the streets, how many dark houses there are, and that 3 years on, there's still a lot that needs to be done.
Everyone in New Orleans appreciates everyone who comes down, not only the work, but to be able to come back and then tell the story, the true story of what's really going on here and how wonderful people are. We're picking ourselves up by our bootstraps with the help of volunteers, and we're doing it, and there are a lot of wonderful stories down here, and we're working together, and we'd love to tell you all about it.
The Los Angeles River, once a junk graveyard. Like Dante in Paradise Lost, she needed a poet to lead her out of the inferno. That poet is Lewis McAdams. 40 years ago, cutting a hole in a wire fence, he crept down and asked her if he could speak for her. She didn't say no. And that's how Friends of the Los Angeles River began.
The river is a rigorous mistress, but when you tickle her with your deeds, you can hear her laughter from beneath her concrete corset.
So, do you know who wrote that?
No.
Well, the river can always hear us. Wake up, honey, and listen to the wind outside.
The river is a rigorous mistress.
But when you tickle her with your deeds, you can hear her laughter
from beneath her concrete corset. It's pretty deep.
What do you think a corset is?
A corset is like something that's form-fitting, that like gives a woman shape.
I think that refers directly to this river, which is paved with concrete. But it's whimsical. That's what a river is. You can never step in the same river twice.
The hurricane is breaking through tonight. Mother Nature's unchecked wrath won't leave nothing in her path. This morning she scorched.
The river is a regard mistress, but when we tickle her with your deeds, you can hear her laughter from beneath her concrete corset.
Oh shoot! Oh shoot! Oh, that wasn't bad.
I'm pretty sure he's saying that even if we cover up our lands with the concrete, there's still life blooming underneath it.
Jacob, look what we found.
But it's hidden from the world, so we cannot see its beauty.
You can hear her laughter from beneath her concrete corset. I guess it would mean when you like disturb her, the dark stuff or the stuff that you don't want comes from all over the place. I guess I would say that.
To me it means you need to be careful.
Mother Nature's unchecked wrath won't leave nothing in her path. This morning she scorched up the plains. Now she's brought the wind and rain. Shut, and the windows taped up.
I mean, for me, it's, it's recognizing and taking a look at, what you do and how it affects what's around you, in this case being the river, and just knowing that we can make a difference and be a part of it.
The hurricane is breaking through tonight. The hurricane is breaking through too.
Wait, who do you think wrote that?
It was either Walt Whitman, because I don't think concrete was around then, or who's the other one? Adams? There's a poet from the 20th century. It's Adams something, but Walt Whitman is my guess.
Los Feliz bow tie, Fletcher bow tie, and frog spot are estimated to have about 1,000 volunteers.
The river is the unknown gem of Los Angeles, so we need to clean it up and keep taking care of it and bring it back to life.
Why am I here? Because we love LA and we love our river and we want it to be as nice as possible.
Kind of like fishing, isn't it?
Hey, look at it, it's getting right there. If we get to that log, you got another big piece. Oh no, it went by.
Life have no problem down in this bottom under the sea. Go.
So barbed wire doesn't stop volunteers.
No, they did a perfect job. Not only the volunteers, but the staff, Cleaning Green, Conservation Corps, and everybody, joined together to make the LA River better again. As you could tell, all this trash came from the river. And thanks to the volunteers and everybody, we could keep the river maintained clean again.
Oh, it's an anime. It's basically about this guy who comes from outer space and he gets used to Earth, and then he's a Super Saiyan, and then he kills bad guys that try to kill Earth.
Yeah, he's technically a god. He's technically a god. He fights bad guys.
And is it, does he really volunteer?
Yeah, he does.
How does he volunteer?
He saves the Earth like 1,000 times.
Say that again?
He saves the Earth like 1,000 times. Yeah.
After today, what do you think about the river being the same river?
Well, it definitely isn't the same river because all these volunteers just helped out a lot to clean it up. And I mean, obviously there's still a lot more to get clean, but it's a good step forward. You know?
The last volunteers.
There's a couple more back there.